Okay, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihi. My name is Rafia Hanif Cleofas, and I'm with DEEN Support Services, DEEN, which means Disability Empowerment Equality Network. And DEEN is a registered Canadian charity funded by Muslims with Disabilities, and we operate a number of programs. We have programs in Mississauga, Ottawa, and Scarborough. And right now, with all that's going on, our programs are actually going online, and we're doing providing services virtually. That seems to be the new norm now. And we serve individuals with disability, regardless of religion, language, and culture. So today, thank you for joining us. We welcome you to this amazing webinar in conjunction with Coach the Mind, Brother Mohammed Sheikh, who has partnered with us to provide this free webinar on understanding the heart-brain connection and practical tools for building resilience. And you know, as we try to maneuver this worldwide pandemic with cities and entire countries shutting down, many are bracing for what may come. And we're watching the headlines and wondering what is going to happen next and how long is this going to last. Only a few days ago, Premier Doug Ford announced 3,000 to 15,000 Ontarians might die as a result of the coronavirus over the next 18 to 24 months. The numbers are staggering. And we are experiencing a range of emotions, from fear to overwhelm to stress, and even a sense of helplessness. During these times of uncertainty and stress, it becomes even more important that we balance ourselves emotionally and mentally. And that's where today we will be offering some support and help to to give us Mohammed is going to give us some techniques we can practice to keep ourselves calm and composed through these uncertain times. So I would like to welcome Mohammed Sheikh. And before he starts, I'll just say a few words about him. He is a mind mechanic. What a cool name, mind mechanic. A certified professional hypnotist and an NLP master practitioner and trainer, a HeartMath certified trainer and coach. He helps people break through emotional and mental blocks by teaching them how to use their unconscious mind to change the stories they tell themselves and help in the processing of stuck emotions from history. You can't change your past, but you can change your relationship with your past. Mohammed has traveled extensively and taken thousands of hours of training in order to be able to use the latest methods, technologies, and neuroscience to allow his clients to transform unwanted behaviors and move towards desired internal states instead. He works at Coach the Mind, and also he works with various local community organizations to help them succeed. And today is a prime example of that collaboration with community organization, which I think is amazing, especially in these times when we need the support of those who can help out and do whatever we can in our own little way. This is amazing, and so many people are going to be benefiting from this webinar and this information. Today, he will lead the group in simple practical knowledge of the impact of our emotions have on our body, including the immune system, the heart-brain connection, and how that relates to making better choices. And will teach us a HeartMath technique we can use to recenter our emotional and mental energies. He is also my coach, teacher, and I'm enrolled in his core transformational program. And that's where I learn various concepts, tools, strategies to help me master whatever life throws at us. And let me give you a practical example of one of the things that I've learned. You know, one of the things he taught us in class was how to use language to influence people, right? So, and one of the things is that when you ask, I'll give you one example. When he said, when you ask somebody something, put in the word because. So after class, I tried this out with my husband, and I said to him, I said to my husband, can you help me to put away the food because I'm tired? My husband goes, okay, no problem. I'm like, what? It was amazing how this strategy worked, and it's just one of the gems of one of the things that we're learning in the class. And mashallah, it's been a major impact. It has a major impact on me and my life, and I'm sure the other students, some of them who are here today. Okay, before Mohammed starts, I would like to mention that we will have a chance to answer, ask questions, and also he has a surprise for us towards the end of the webinar. So stay and you'll get a gift from him actually. So thank you so much, and please take it over, Mohammed.
Great. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It is, honestly, I'm really, really glad to be here. And Rafia, thank you so much for inviting me. You know, ultimately, what's going on right now in the world, and really all the time, it's about humanity and each and every one of us kind of coming together and just sharing, you know, my gift and my knowledge is, you know, how the brain works and how we can take control of our behaviors, of our thoughts, right? So that's what I'm offering. And yet, you know, I'm hearing wonderful stories of people getting together and lending a hand to deliver groceries to individuals that can't, you know, go out and get groceries themselves. I'm hearing people and just friends and community who are sewing masks and distributing that. So, you know, it's really, really amazing to see just everyone sort of stepping up and doing our part. So for those of you guys that are not familiar with me, I know Rafia gave a very detailed introduction, but let me just kind of bring it down to ultimately who I am and why I do what I do and what I do. So I live here in Mississauga, so I'm local to you guys, assuming that you guys are also part of the GTA. And, you know, I've been married, I have a 10-year-old son, and this has kind of been, Mississauga has been my home since I was about 7 years old. So for the last 30 years, this is where I've been living. And in terms of the work that I do, I think the best way to summarize that is I've always been fascinated why, you know, the same life event can happen to two different people, right? And whatever that life event is. But for one person, that might perhaps become the reason that sends them on kind of like a downward spiral in doing everything that's wrong in the book and getting into things that are not good for them and just going on this downward spiral of self-destruction. And yet the exact same thing can happen to another person. And that's like the thing that turns them into like a speaker on TED, you know, maybe 20, 30 years later in life. So, you know, in that, I think on the surface level, we all understand that it has everything to do with how people choose to respond to what life throws at them. There's this saying that's very popular, it's out there, I'm sure you've seen it, that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you choose to respond to that. So on the surface, I think we can all agree that that's ultimately what determines the quality of life and other experiences, or rather the path that we fall on. But I've also been curious on really and studying and understanding what are the circumstances that really set up an individual to make choices that puts them on one path or another. So as Rafia mentioned, you know, I've done a lot of work in just really understanding what the subconscious and unconscious mind is all about, our beliefs, and I found neurolinguistic programming to be a wonderful mechanism and a wonderful body of knowledge that exists to really basically teach us how we experience the world and teach us why we do the things that we do. And then later I became certified as a trainer for HeartMath Institute, which is a non-for-profit organization. And what we're going to be drawing upon mainly for today's presentation. It's a non-for-profit organization that's been around for the last 30 years. And they've been doing research all about the energetics of the heart. Now, as Muslims, I think we all, of course, understand that we know that the heart is the most important organ that we have. I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always tells us that if the heart is good, then the rest of the body would be good, right? And if the heart is soft, then, inshallah, that's a good sign. We're gonna realize that by the end of my presentation here today, that is actually more than just a metaphor, that there's actually a very literal meaning behind the importance of the heart. Now, I discovered HeartMath, because I needed it. In 2015, I actually ended up in the hospital due to burnout. My blood pressure went up to something like 195 over 150. And ultimately, everything was fine physically, alhamdulillah. But when the results went to my doctor, he said, Mohammed, you've got a stress problem. And I kind of laughed, and I remember laughing, and I said, well, I actually help people with anxiety and stress. So it's kind of interesting. But I understood that what happened was, it wasn't necessarily like negative thinking or, depression or anxiety or anything like that, that we all tend to really go through in different phases in our life. But what it was I was just trying to do too much. And what I needed to understand was effectively how to balance my energy and how to build my resiliency, because everything that I was involved in, with the non-for-profit work I did, the coaching stuff that I do, raising a family, all the other stuff that I'm involved with, it was just a lot. And I needed to build my resiliency, not so I can cut down, but so I can properly manage and be effective in everything that I do. So inshallah, I'm going to be sharing some of that research and the concepts with you. And if you guys have any questions, we're gonna have opportunities to answer questions, and I'll stick around. I know that Rafia gave me about an hour for this presentation, and I promise you that hour is going to be very interesting, and it's going to be interactive. But I'm going to ask that all questions kind of be held on to the end. Just write them down, and then I will stay as long as you need me to answer whatever questions that you have. So inshallah, there's going to be a lot of benefit in this for you. I'm going to share my screen so we can get right into the presentation. Okay, so building resilience and understanding the heart-brain connection. So that's me, right? Or rather my Bitmoji. So I talked about this word called resilience. And if you guys want to actually open up your chat windows, let's make it a little bit interactive. What do you think, what does resilience mean to you guys? If anyone wants to quickly drop in some answers, what does resilience mean? Love to hear. This way it keeps everyone awake too. There you go. The power of tolerance, keep calm under pressure, to adapt and change quickly. Yes, absolutely. Right. And so those are all true. The resilience is definitely like having this armor and having this shield around us. And it has to do with, how much things affect us. And I really like Brother Isa Mughal's answer, to adopt, to change quickly. It has a lot to do with how resilient we are. I'm going to give you the definition that HeartMath Institute has put together, because it kind of combines everything that you're saying into a more, encapsulated definition. So resilience is the capacity to prepare for, recover from, and adapt in the face of challenge or adversity, right? Let me break this down, because each of these words actually has a lot of depth to it. So the first is the capacity. Now, when you look at, there's a picture here of some batteries there. So just like, every night I charge my cell phone battery, right? It's going to charge up, but there's also a certain capacity, right? I can't have more charge or more energy in that battery than its capacity. So that's the first definition. Understand that all of us, we all have a metaphorical capacity of just how much energy we have available to us. Now, when we're operating on again, metaphorical, when we're operating on a low battery, that we're not necessarily going to make the best decisions. And I'm going to get deeper into why that actually is during the heart-brain communication piece. But when we're energized and we've had, like, let's say a good night's sleep, we had a good breakfast, we're in a good mood, all of that, whatever life happens to throw at us, we're at our capacity there, we got a full charge, we're going to be able to definitely make better decisions and respond in a way that's going to set us up towards the path that we want to be on. Now, to recover from and adapt in the face of stress. So that, understands and really gives permission to each and every one of us that we're all going to fall down. That's life. We're all human, and to acknowledge that. And part of being human is to get upset, is to get, thrown off our game, is to make bad decisions, right? But when that happens, how quickly can we actually get back on our feet? How quickly can we recover from that emotionally, mentally, spiritually? Is it a matter of months? Is it a matter of weeks? Is it a matter of days? Is it a matter of hours? Or maybe it's a matter of minutes, right? So the more resilient we are, the quicker and faster we can recover and get back to doing what we should be doing in stress, challenge, or adversity. The other way I want you to understand things is, just imagine that I have a container. And in this container, there's a limit, there's a capacity of just how much I can take on at one time. Now this is different, kind of opposite from the battery, because battery is about the amount of energy I have available. Well, the container that I'm talking about right now has to do with how much I can take on at one time. And as long as what I'm taking on is inside the capacity of that container, then I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be able to work. I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to make good decisions. I'm going to be happy. Everything's going to go great. But the minute that's even a little bit outside, like when you're filling water and you go a little bit, it starts spilling, right? Just a little bit over, that's when everything starts going wrong. So to understand that we really need to manage how much we put in that container, and also to understand that we are ultimately energy systems. And because we're energy systems, we need to find ways, just like we charge our cell phone every night, what are we doing to recharge our inner battery? Again, that's just an example, a metaphor. Basically, we are energy systems that expand and renew energy. Right down from the food that we eat to the sleep that we get, all of it's about turning that food into energy and sleep to rest and recover, right? The good news is we can learn to build our resilience capacity so we can actually increase the capacity, which is something that I needed to learn how to do so that I can continue doing everything and be able to take on and have a bigger container so I can take on more of what life throws at me, before I go bust. Right? So we can learn to build our capacity and also to sustain our energy. Now, HeartMath Institute defines the 4 categories or 4 domains of resiliency under these 4 categories. So physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional. Now, the physical domain has to do with our physical body. So it has to do with just how much energy we have to do the physical tasks, like our muscles, our strength. If I help my friend, move boxes all day, well, I'm going to be physically tired. That is going to take away from that battery. It's going to drain my battery, right? The mental domain has to do with our ability to concentrate, to focus, to be creative, right? To have future insight, to have thoughts of planning, all of that wonderful prefrontal cortex, our executive functions of our brain, all of the stuff that we do, all the good decisions we make, we make them when we have that energy available. Now, if we're drained, if we're mentally tired, we're not going to be able to make good decisions, are we? Our spiritual domain has to do with our, not necessarily our DEEN or our religion or anything like that, but it does come into play because it has to do with our commitment to values. So the values and beliefs that I do have, right? If I am acting and I'm doing behaviors that go against what I believe or go against my values, guess what? That's going to be a drain on my energy, right? And at the same time, it's my ability to be tolerant of other people's values and other people's beliefs. Not everyone likes what I like. I'm a big Apple fan, right? Other people have Androids, no big deal, right? I always give that example as a joke. But we're going to have people that believe in different things, that see the world through a different set of eyes, hear the world through different ears, and they feel the world differently than we do. And so we need to be tolerant. When our battery is charged, right, we're fine. Nothing really gets under our skin. But again, think about what happens when we're drained. Maybe we didn't have a good night's sleep. Maybe we didn't have a proper breakfast, right? Maybe there's other things that are happening. And so our battery is low. Well, then don't we find in those circumstances that people tend to get under our skin more, right? And maybe the same thing that they would say that wouldn't bother us when our battery is charged actually bothers us now. And emotional, that domain has to do with our ability to self-regulate our emotions, which is basically our ability and our skill set that when we start going down a certain path emotionally, when we get emotionally compromised, whether it be anxiety, fear, depression, sadness, how quickly can we actually get off of that and regulate ourselves to go back to a more centered and neutral place to be, right? Now, the interesting thing is when we're talking about energy and resiliency, they all draw from the same pool and all four of them are connected and they affect one another. I mean, think about it. If I was to spend the entire day in that example I gave about, helping my friends move, I spent the whole day moving, lifting heavy boxes. Am I going to have the mental capacity to do my taxes, when I get home, right? Or am I going to be able to focus on anything? Am I going to be able to do any sort of work? No, right? And because I'm drained, I probably am going to get, triggered by other people as well, right? When they say something that normally I would just let it brush off, right? And so the same thing is when we're physically tired, even our ability to regulate ourselves emotionally does get compromised. Now, from the research that they've been doing, we've really understood that out of these four domains, our emotional domain, perhaps you've already guessed it, our emotional domain has the most impact over all four of them, right? When we're emotionally compromised, that is going to physically, that's why, something upsetting happens, we physically feel tired, don't we, right? We don't want to do any work, right? And we'll find ourselves, less tolerant at the same time. Now, when we're emotionally in a good place and we're renewed, perhaps we're feeling confident, perhaps we're feeling love, perhaps we're feeling gratitude, these sort of emotions, well, we might actually be able to do more physical tasks, or maybe we'll be able to concentrate better. So these four domains are definitely connected. I'm going to give you a quick example of this. So in this example, we have a husband and wife, and they're in a car, so they're not physically moving. And what we're looking at is his heart rate on the y-axis, and then time, the number of minutes that has kind of went by. Now, the way they got this data is because the husband was actually wearing a Holter monitor. If you're not familiar with that, it's basically a device that you wear for 24 hours and it keeps track of your heart rate. And you're also asked to keep a log, a diary of everything that kind of happens. So what we know here is they're in the car, so they're not physically moving, right? There's no exercise happening. But his heart rate is at a baseline, if you look at the 0 to 10 mark, of about 60 to 80 beats per minute on the high end. And then the wife says something, and everyone asks me, what did she say? We don't know. No one knows what she said. But the wife says something that gets under his skin. And look what happens to his heart rate. It shoots up to one point being almost 150 beats per minute, right? Like it goes up to that point and then it stays up there, right? Just burning that battery, just using up that energy. But what's even more interesting and a bit scary at the same time is that even when they fully make up, it's water under the bridge, they're no longer angry with each other because of the effects that the emotions have on our physical body. His heart rate remains elevated at around 100, 120 for like the next 6-7 hours. You only see up to like the 1 hour mark here, but it remains elevated. I'm going to tell you guys why that is, but I just want to quickly show you this example. All right, so I'm going to hope the internet is working properly because I have a quick movie to show you guys. Just if you haven't already opened up, yeah, we don't have the wife, someone asked privately, we don't have the wife's heartbeat. Only the husband was being measured. I'm sure the wife's heartbeat went up too. If you guys have the chat window open, I'm going to ask you a question that at the end of this clip, it's just a 30-second clip. Just let me know how watching this video makes you feel. You want to turn up your volume. Okay, terrifying. I already got some answers. What else? Overwhelmed, confused, yeah. Anxiety. Yeah, like we need some quiet time in nature, disturbed, definitely, right? And this is typical, right? So the sort of the answers. I always have one person in the group that's like, oh, that was really nice, right? Not sure if you have anyone this time. Let me show you another 30-second clip, and I'm gonna ask you the same question. How did it make you feel this time? So what was it like this time? Happy and calm, peaceful, still confused, but the music is culprit both times, yes.
Mohammed,
Motivated.
can you maybe describe the video for those who are blind, may not be able to see it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the video has a basically series of disjointed images that are of really New York City. So just different flashes of different parts of the city. You know, there's a picture of a taxi cab that's moving, construction workers, a boy playing with his plane, there's someone dancing, but it's really, really just kind of jarry and put together, right? And in terms of the audio is what's different, right? And the reason we show this is because it's really a metaphor. When you change the audio, you know, for most people, the experience changed from being overwhelmed to calm and happy or peaceful, right? And some people were still, you know, perhaps confused and overwhelmed, and maybe it's because, you know, we were focused more on the images. Now, the reason we show this is it's really a metaphor that just like when you change the soundtrack, it changes the experience. We all have an internal soundtrack, which is basically our emotions. And depending on the emotion that's running inside us at any time, that is going to filter and receive what happens outside of us, what happens to us maybe, or just what's happening around us. We're going to filter that very differently. The same event that can happen, right? If we're emotionally, you know, feeling, you know, maybe grateful or confident or, you know, peace, that's going to create a different reaction out of us than if you were already angry, if you were already anxious or fearful, right? And you can kind of think about it. How many times have, you know, maybe someone accidentally bumped into us, you know, while we were moving, right? Now, if we were in a good place, probably didn't bother us. But if we weren't, you know, we probably lost our cool even more and got even more angry, right? So that's the reason we show this video. But understand that over at HeartMath Institute, we don't necessarily talk about bad emotions or good emotions or negative emotions or positive emotions, right? Because, you know, really, if you think about it, all emotions are appropriate given the context. I think most of us can agree that humor is a really good emotion, right? It's good to laugh. It makes us feel good. It releases endorphins. You know, there's a whole hormonal thing that happens, right? But humor wouldn't necessarily be appropriate at a funeral, right? Wouldn't make sense to make jokes there. At the same time, anger, you know, someone might call that being angry is a negative emotion. It's a bad emotion. But if you think about it, given the context, right, it might be really appropriate. I mean, I'm angry right now, how some people still aren't, you know. I was doing some emergency groceries the other day and I saw, you know, a bunch of teenagers, just like, I think about 15 of them all hanging out, right, all together. So I think that in that case, it's appropriate. You know, some of the atrocities and the violence that happens around the world, you know, I think it's appropriate to be angry there. But at the same time, we don't necessarily want to be stuck in that. HeartMath basically categorizes emotions in two categories, either depletion or depleting emotions or renewing emotions. And that has to do with the effect that it has on your physical body. So what it does to the battery, that metaphorical battery, does it renew you or does it deplete you? So what they found is emotions such as fear, frustration, anger, anxiety, impatience, all of these sort of emotions, what that happens on a physical level, whether it's appropriate given the context or it's not appropriate, what it has, and that's something really important to understand, even if we're justified in that emotion, the impact it has on our body is still going to be the same, right? It's going to have, there's 1,400 biochemical reactions that our body goes through, but the primary hormone that gets released when we're feeling such emotions is cortisol, AKA, or also known as the stress hormone. And this results in, reduced muscle mass, brain cell death. It accelerates aging. It impairs our memory. It has, because of that heart-brain connection, it actually reduces our behavioral choice. All the wonderful things that we know how to do. When we say hindsight was 20/20, I should have done this, but when we're emotionally compromised, we don't have that wonderful menu of choices available to us. So understand that those emotions, again, regardless if they're justified or appropriate or not, they do have this impact from a physical hormonal level, right? And that's why we saw that his heart rate jumped up because of that extra cortisol, because of the sympathetic system that gets activated in our nervous system. And cortisol also has a half-life of about 12 hours, which means that it's working at 100% efficacy for about 12 hours before it starts to taper off. Now, the good news is we also have renewing emotions. So emotions and attitudes such as care, courage, tolerance, appreciation, gratitude, love, calm, all of these, it also puts the body through another 1,400 biochemical reactions. Yet this time, the main hormone that it creates in our body is something called DHEA, which is a vitality hormone. I mean, people buy DHEA off of like the shelf in supplement stores. But what it's responsible for is our vitality, is our healing, is our recovery, right? And when we are more in these emotions, we'll find that we have increased longevity, we have our memory that is improved, our ability to problem solve, see into the future, all of that gets boosted up as well. And for us as Muslims, it's quite remarkable because we know, I mean, how many times does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us to be grateful, right? To be calm, to be patient, to have trust, right? Gratitude is a big one. How many times have we been told to go gratitude? And now we understand that there's actually, and we know that whenever Allah tells us to do something, it's for our own good, right? It's really good for us. And we see right here what happens in our physical body, that we actually begin to rest and recover more and be able to regulate our emotions more. So understand that it really is a conversation about intelligent energy management. That when we find ourselves emotionally compromised, we have to right then do something, which I'm going to be teaching you, by the way. I'm going to be teaching you guys some techniques and tools, and we're going to practice them all together as a group. But we need to right then and there do something to recharge ourselves. Because if we don't, we're going to be draining. We're going to be running on an empty battery. We're going to have excess cortisol going through our body. That's going to be doing damage. So the key takeaway from all of this is really for us to understand that we're energy systems and we expand and renew energy, but also emotions affect our physiology more than our thoughts. So while it's great to have positive thinking, understand that what we feel comes before. Even the way that we're built, right? From the mechanics, of our body, our emotional center is right in the middle. And if we're not emotionally centered, we don't make the best decisions, right? So our thoughts get colored or affected through what our emotions are, just like those emotional soundtracks. Emotions are primary drivers of activity in our major body systems, and they also determine our level of engagement in life's events, what motivates us, and ultimately what we care about. And so we really want to make sure that we're charging ourselves up with renewing emotions as much as possible. And the other thing we talked about is self-regulation. So failures of emotional self-regulation are central to the vast majority of health and relational issues that plagues teams and creates social problems in modern societies. Miscommunications, mistakes, all those things happen because we did not self-regulate. We were emotionally compromised and we did nothing to recenter ourselves. And yet, at the same time, the most important strength that the majority of people can benefit from is building the capacity to more effectively self-regulate our emotions, attitudes, and behaviors. And so, for those of you that have the chat window open, one of the most important steps in being able to stop these drains and increase our resilience is to expand our awareness and identify unnecessary energy expenditures, right? So for those of you that have the chat windows open, what are some things that perhaps we're doing that is creating excess energy drain, that gets us emotionally compromised, where we feel emotions that are depleting, that we actually have choice over, right? Does anyone have any examples of this? Overthinking, absolutely. Rumination, yeah. Right, here's the interesting thing about overthinking and rumination and analysis, paralysis through analysis, right, is that if we're emotionally compromised, we will never find answers. We will never find an answer that is actually going to create a solution. It is impossible to logically come up with any answers if we're emotionally compromised. And therefore, we have to first regulate ourselves, get ourselves back to a place of gratitude, calm. And again, I'm going to be teaching you guys techniques. It's easy to say to people, you need to do this, but let me actually teach the how as well. And then when we're there, suddenly we have access to more perspective and we can actually begin to work on solutions on the way out. The other one that Sister Rahima mentioned is spreading oneself too thin. Absolutely, right? Which is what I did. They were all good and important things, but over the years, I have found so much of my impact, my productivity, and my personal and success in the world because I got really, 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 really good at saying no to pretty much everything. Right? That's my default answer. What that allows me to do now is for me to say yes to the things that really are important and the things that really align with how I want to live my life, right? Which is what allowed me to say yes to Sister Rafia in order to be doing this for you guys, right? So really, and it's something that comes with practice, but again, awareness of that is great, right? I really like stress over uncontrollable aspects of life. Brother Akbar said that, right? Naeem said the exact same thing, worrying over things that we have no control over, right? And that's the thing, because if you go back to how we started this, 10% of what happens to us, but life is really 90% of how we choose to respond to it, right? I mean, everything that happens is outside of our control. But if you really think about it, it is the greatest blessing that Allah has given us, that has given humanity and insan, is that the thing that actually matters is what really determines our quality of life. And that is choice, how we choose to respond. So we have control, right? That is the one thing that no one can take away from us. It is our ability to choose. Even when we think we don't have a choice, that, by the way, is a choice. But we always have the ability to choose how to respond to what's happening. And that's what creates the different paths. So that's beautiful to understand that pushing against a wall, to trying to do something that we have no aspect of control over, right? We're just going to stress ourselves out because we're trying to move something that is immovable. Yet, the thing that actually determines our quality of life and where our personal freedom is choice. And we always have that available to us. Worrying over things that we have, blaming, yeah, absolutely, right? Think about it, right? When we blame others, we're basically putting responsibility on our emotions and our thoughts on someone else. When that, again, is choice, but that's can go down a rabbit hole of other conversations. But definitely, these are great things that we've all, alhamdulillah, identified here. So to begin to understand how much we have control over not maybe getting into those things, right? That when we sort of find ourselves in it, to do the technique that I'm going to teach shortly, to get ourselves out of it. I know for me, when the whole lockdown and everything really happened, I was spending way too much time, going through the Facebook articles and the WhatsApp messages and the news and all that sort of stuff. And, it was the same thing. Nothing really changed, right? But spending all that time, of course, it creates all those emotions. And I lost a number of days of productivity and just really my own health as well. So to understand that that is another example. So let's learn a quick technique. I'm gonna guide everyone through it, and then we'll break down the steps. Actually, let me explain the steps first, and then I'll guide everyone. We'll do it together as a group. Okay. So what the quick coherence technique is the first step is to physically get ourselves into a more centered place, and we achieve that by focusing our attention to the area of the heart. Now, it's been shown through various research and studies that whatever we put our attention to, somehow, energy just seems to go there. Energy flows where attention goes. Maybe you've heard of that, right? So even when we focus on the area of our heart, right, our body, our subconscious somehow knows that we want to put emphasis and importance there, right? And you'll actually see increased activity there. And then we imagine that as we breathe, our breath is flowing in and out of our heart or chest area in whatever manner makes the most sense. But we just pretend that our breath is actually going in and out of our heart. And we're gonna breathe a little slower and deeper than usual. If it's comfortable for you, I'm gonna recommend that we take a breath of 5 seconds in and then 5 seconds out. Whatever rhythm, though, is comfortable and sustainable. We don't want to be taxing ourselves. Now, this just begins the process of physically, centering and calming us down. But the secret, the magic sauce here has, again, everything to do with our emotions. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a sincere attempt in experiencing a regenerative or renewing emotion, such as appreciation or care for someone or something in your life, or perhaps gratitude, or perhaps a time when someone did something really special for you, or a loved one, someone that you have a lot of love or appreciation or care for, right? Whatever it is that you need to think of, which is going to bring about those emotions, that's what we want to hold on, because again, when we consciously hold on to a renewing emotion, we get all of those physical impacts, right? We get our battery gets charged, we strengthen our resiliency, right? And our body creates DHEA, which is a vitality hormone. So let's do this together as a group. We're going to spend the next 3 minutes doing this. So I'm going to ask everyone, you don't have to, but if it's comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes. And I'm going to read the steps and I'll guide everyone through. So go ahead and close your eyes and focus your attention in the area of the heart. And some people might actually find it easier to put their hand on their heart. Imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area. Breathing a little slower. And deeper than usual. And if it's comfortable, try for 5 seconds in. And 5 seconds out. Whatever is comfortable and sustainable. We're not holding our breath. As you get to the top, just exhale. Just even breathing. Make a sincere attempt now to experience a renewing feeling or emotion, such as appreciation, care, love, or gratitude for someone or something in your life. Try to re-experience the feeling you have for someone you love a special place maybe, an accomplishment, or just focus on the feeling of calm or ease. And as you breathe evenly, hold that emotion in your heart. And let's hang out here for another minute. I'll keep track. Okay, thank you. So what was that experience like? Go ahead and type your answers on the chat. Calm, serenity, relaxing. I think there's a word missing from all the bad energies, maybe letting go of the bad energies, relaxed. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so also understand that as I get to the next part of the presentation, while we do feel relaxed, relaxed isn't necessarily either what we're going for either. It's good to be relaxed, but we can be on the go as well and be in this coherent state, to be in this heart-centered state. I mean, that's when, again, what we're going for is a place where we can behave and we can act with urgency if we need to. I mean, take a look at a medical doctor or a paramedic, you know, or any of the first responders. They want to have 100% use of their brain, right? Yet we want to be calm and peaceful. We don't want to be freaking out, right? But yeah, that's absolutely it, right? Now, here's an interesting question. How many of you thought that was more than a minute, that it was longer than a minute? Anyone? Yes, yeah. Right? And that's you know, normal, and most of us do. The reason I share that, and really to point out, is we often think we don't have time, right? But if we just do this, if this is what we can do in a minute, just imagine if we do 5 minutes of this, what kind of an impact that's going to have on our state, our energetic state, our mental state, our emotional state, right? We can totally fit this in. Right. And again, you know, the secret sauce here, just to be clear, the secret sauce here is not, the breathing is great. That's what begins to shift ourselves to that calm, coherent space. But really what it is activating that emotion. When we fill our hearts with gratitude, with love, with appreciation, that's what it is. And if you think about it, you know, our DEEN, you know, alhamdulillah, we have an opportunity to fill our hearts with gratitude, you know, well, minimum 5 times a day, don't we? Right? And so even if we just do this and we have this intention or salah, that when we're praying, that, you know, like we pay attention to the words that we're saying and what the meaning is behind that, right? And to fill ourselves and get ourselves into that heart-centered space, because that's what really re-energizes us, and which is really what salah is supposed to be about anyways, is to you know, reconnect us with our creator. I wanted to throw this one slide in here just to, you know, because I feel it's really relevant given our and I'll describe the slide given our situation. So what this is the slide that shows the impact of our emotions on our immune system, on our immunity. And what they did here is they did multiple, they repeated this test multiple times. But they established baseline and took the reading of, when you do a cotton swab inside our mouth, you can measure what's known as immunoglobulin A, which is effectively our immune response. So how strong our immune system is. So whatever that number was, if someone was made to feel anger and they held on to that anger for 5 minutes, you'll see that our immune system dropped basically by more than 50% in this example, from 35 milligrams per, I'm not sure how to read this, I'm not a doctor, right? But it dropped, right, by a considerable amount, just by 5 minutes of anger. And then it slowly, again, as we got out of it, it slowly started to go up over a time of 6 hours. Yet, when we held and we practiced care, right, and we put trust, right, and appreciation and grateful, all those sort of emotions, our immune system response actually went up, right? Just because the concentration of immunoglobulin A, which is how we measure how strong our immune system is through a cotton swab anyways, that actually increased. Our body produced more of it. So something really, really interesting to keep in mind, especially with what's going on. Okay. So I do have about another 15, 20 minutes of slides. I think we started past the hour, so I'm hoping we're okay to continue. But I wanted to really, if you need to leave, I mean, I understand that, but definitely we're gonna have questions, and I do have, like that surprise for you guys. But we'll make sure we get that emailed out, so if you do need to leave, don't worry about it. I wanted to get deeper into more of the research and the science of the heart-brain connection. So I've been using this word already called coherence. The way HeartMath defines coherence is we're talking about, I'm just gonna quote here the head of research for HeartMath Institute, Dr. Roland McCready. So he defines coherence as coherence is the state when the heart, the mind, and our emotions are in energetic alignment and cooperation. It is a state that builds resiliency. Our personal energy is accumulated, it's not wasted, leaving more energy to manifest intentions and harmonious outcomes. So coherence is when our body, our physical body, our mind, our thoughts, our heart, our emotions, all of that is in perfect cooperation and energetic alignment, right? And which builds resiliency and gives us more choice for the outcomes that we want. When we look at our nervous system, and so what I'm showing here is a picture of the nervous system, just a cross section. So we have the two branches of our nervous system. We have the sympathetic branch and we have the parasympathetic branch. The sympathetic branch, you can think of it as the accelerator pedal on your car, right? It is what makes the body go. So when, if out of nowhere, I don't know, a tiger somehow comes into my room, the sympathetic branch is what's going to be responsible for pumping and shooting adrenaline into my body, right? So our fight, flight, freeze response happens due to the sympathetic. It is what mobilizes energy and gets us ready to take action. Sympathetic branch is what creates cortisol. Our parasympathetic branch, on the other hand, is like the brake pedal of our car. And what that does is responsible for our rest and recovery, to store, to relax, to store energy instead, right? And really that optimal state that we're looking for happens when these two branches are in perfect coordination. One is not supposed to be more than the other. And what often happens is not that we have an overactive sympathetic branch, it's rather we have an underactive parasympathetic branch, that we're not doing what we need to do. Our body has lost its ability over time, right? Because we haven't been regulating ourselves or renewing our battery. Over time, our brake has basically gotten weaker, right? We need to change our brakes or, make them stronger. And the technique that we just learned, when we consciously practice those emotions, it actually creates that coordination. Because if you look at it, the major connections of the nervous system is it starts from the brain. So the branches start from the brain, but the other major point that it connects in our body is our heart, right? That's the other main connection. And what the research shows, and doctors have known about this actually for a while now, is that while the brain sends communication down to the heart, the heart actually sends more information and more communication up to the brain, right? It's actually 80-20, if not 90-10. I haven't figured it out, but it's definitely the vast majority of communication goes from the heart up to the brain. The only information that the brain sends to the heart is really about regulating blood pressure, increase or decrease. But everything else, the heart, I mean, the heart is the first organ that's created, when we're born, right? And so the heart actually has its own neural network, right? There's a whole field of medicine called, the word is escaping me, neural cardiology. So it's basically about studying the neural networks that exist in our hearts. The heart, in a way, has its own brain, and it sends information up to the brain. Now, depending on that signal that it's sending up, it is what actually affects our ability to make decisions and our brain functions. And what affects that relationship between the branches is, again, the emotions that we feel. I'm always going to come back to emotions here, because that is what ultimately affects the signal that's going up to that brain. So when we're talking about coherence, right, this can actually be measured. There's devices and sensors out there called an heart rate variability sensor, or HRV, right? When we measure the patterns of HRV, on the left side, it looks like a very chaotic, it just looks chaotic. It's all zigzagging, right? That is an example of someone in which the two branches are out of sync, or out of coordination. And that happens, again, when they're feeling emotions such as, anger, frustration, anxiety, depression, all of that, right? It sends a very glitchy signal up to the brain. And that's how that gets measured. Yet for someone that is feeling appreciation, calm, patience, confidence, right, it's this nice, almost swooping, even rhythm, which gets measured. And because of the heart-brain communication, right, depending on what we're feeling, as I said before, it actually affects our ability to make good decisions, right, be creative, find solutions. When I earlier said, we're not going to be able to think of good solutions if we're emotionally compromised, this is the reason why, because parts of our brain literally are turned off, right? So to understand that when we feel ourselves, emotionally compromised, we definitely want to take a few minutes, take 5 minutes. At that time, shift, do this exercise, right, which is the breathing, but you want to consciously activate a renewing emotion such as love, appreciation, or gratitude. And when we do that, it opens ourselves up, it opens our brain, and perhaps from that new perspective, we're able to think of actual solutions rather than continuing down that path of rumination or just focusing on things that we have absolutely no control over. And so to put this all together, practicing coherence, which is really the physical and energetic state achieved when we consciously practice gratitude, love, a sense of connection to everyone else, or any other renewing emotion, when we take pride in what we've accomplished and what we're able to do, when we take this, we have trust and we embrace a challenge, all of those emotions, what it does is it allows us to build resilience. So we increase our capacity as well to stay composed. And when we're there, we're able to make our best decisions and also to reduce the effects of stress, right? Again, stress decreases our immune system. It impairs us, so that effect is reduced when we consciously practice coherence. And the last thing that I want to share, given what's kind of going on here, is it is understandable, especially if you're spending more and more time reading things, just what's happening around the world, it's going to create fear. And we know the research has shown that balancing the energetic nature of our mind and emotions while practicing compassionate care for ourselves, that enhances the immune system. Yet excess worry, anxiety, and fear, that compromises the immune system. Fear basically disempowers us. But we still need to kind of keep up to date, don't we? We need to know what's happening in the world, right? And so what we can do is we can actually replace fear, if you will, with an attitude of managed concern, where we'll do our checks, whether it's our daily checks, or we'll get, be up to date with what's happening, but it's with an attitude and a filter of just managed concern, before fear begins to kind of seep in. So managed concern allows us to stay up to date with the latest developments, but it distances us from fear and worry. So just something to kind of keep in mind. And the final thing is, the last slide here. Understand, and they can actually measure this now through devices, that our heart creates an electromagnetic field, right? This is basic physics. Because we're electrical beings, you know, when we go to the hospital, you know, they might hook us up to an ECG, an electrocardiogram. So we know there's current that is going through our body. And whenever current moves, it produces an electromagnetic field. The electromagnetic field that our heart creates can actually be measured using current technology up to 3 feet from our body, which is amazing because the magnetic field that is created from our skulls, from our head, can only be measured about 2 inches from our skull, 1.5 to 2 inches from our skull. But the one that our heart creates, and inside that is effectively our thoughts and our emotions, right? So it's not saying that we have the ability to read someone's thoughts or emotions, but understand that we all are walking around with a vibe. And I think intuitively, we all know this. You know, we say things like, oh, this person, I don't know, they just gave me a good vibe, or, you know, I get a good feeling from this person. Or if someone is really, if a bunch of people are really, really upset about something and no one's talking, you walk into the room and you'll say something like, wow, you can cut the tension, you know, with a knife. I think we all sort of relate to this. We all understand intuitively that there is a very much of a thing here. My point being is that when we practice calm, gratitude, appreciation, the people that are around us actually get uplifted. We don't even have to say anything. Just holding that space, we are going to uplift those around us, right? And so this stuff is contagious, right? So let's spread it everywhere. Let's spread care, love, and appreciation, and uplift those that are around us. And that's all it for my presentation. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Really appreciate you guys joining me. I'm here for questions. I'll stay around for as long as you want me to. The surprise, by the way, is something that I put out there where I'm actually offering free sessions for anyone that is feeling stressed or overwhelmed due to what's going on, right? I'll send you guys a link, or rather Sister Rafia will email the webpage that I put together for this, but it's a genuine offer, right? It costs absolutely nothing, right? And if you wanna, you know, experience what more stuff like this, or experience hypnosis, or experience an NLP type approach to managing overwhelm or anxiety or stress, I'm more than happy to schedule 90 minutes with each and every one of you to just kind of get you guys back into that emotionally centered place, because this seems to be here. The coronavirus epidemic seems to be here for the long term, and we want to make sure that we are making the best of the situation, right? Yeah. So any questions? Let me get rid of the screen share so you guys can see my face, and right, we can do a face-to-face.
Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate your time, your effort, and this amazing, amazing tool that you've given us that we can use to help calm, you know, the fears. Okay, we're open up now for questions. Please type your questions in the chat box.
So I think the recording is going to be made available. The question is, will this video be available with audio and slides? Just as per my licensing agreement with HeartMath, I'm actually not allowed to just send the slides by itself, but I believe the recording is going to be made available, so you can go through the presentation that way, and the audio as well.
Okay.
How do you balance when you are too sensitive to emotions? Sometimes the sensitivity takes over you and your emotions. Absolutely, right? That's a wonderful question. You know, it's kind of like, you know, I teach this stuff, and it's like, well, how do you remember to do it when you're already angry, or when you're already, you know, upset about something? So I'm going to answer this question 2 ways. The first one is, that's why the breathing is the first step. Because when we change our breathing, it changes our physical body. And when we change our physical body, it actually changes our thinking, right? It's just the way the mechanics of our being, the way we've been created, works, right? So when we change our breathing, but just by taking a deep breath, if you think about it, you know, what do we say to our kids, you know, when they're They're having a tantrum. It's like, calm down, take a deep breath, take a deep breath, slow down here, right? So if you can remember to do that, that it will allow us to take pause and then maybe take a few seconds to really appreciate something. Now, the other answer to this is, most of us, because we're human, we're not going to even remember to take a deep breath. And that's why prep comes into play. So this is actually, what I shared with you guys is actually part of a much larger training and workshop that I do. And in that workshop, I talk about the importance of prep. I mean, if you think about it, we prep anything that's important for us, whether we're going for an exam or a job interview, or just you have something important coming up, we always put our time in, we prep for it. So similarly, before anything happens, if the first thing that we do, and I really recommend all of my clients that we do a similar exercise to the ones I taught you guys today, that we make it the first thing that we do. And that's what the prep is. Because now we get to take conscious choice before anything happens. We get to choose how we want to show up, and we get to choose how we want to feel, right? Because chances are the first thing, when you wake up, we're probably in a pretty neutral state. Nothing's happened yet, right? So when we spend 5-10 minutes, as the first thing that we do, doing this exercise, is really centering ourselves. What that allows us to do, just like any practice, any prep, any training, that when something happens, when we get shot with that emotional bullet, if you will, right, we're going to be more likely to be able to regulate ourselves. We're going to be more likely to remember, hey, okay, this person or this thing that just happened really, really upset me. Before I continue on with my day, let me take 5 minutes and just reset myself. Okay, let me just read here. Hopefully that answers your question. Yes, definitely. There's a link that's posted there. I mean, these services, go a long way. So if you can donate, definitely donate. I have another question from Akbar. He's sending it to me privately. That's why it's not showing up in the chat. How does your breathing technique relate to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when saying control your anger, sitla, etc.? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think all I've really done, not that we needed to, is really validated and affirmed, right? I've given you perhaps the science, right? Ultimately, it's the exact same thing. When we change our physiology, it'll change our thinking, right? And when we change our breathing, it changes our physiology. And so that's exactly why we were given that advice, It's true we have control over our emotions. However, sometimes choices and decisions are molded for us via external factors. So how do you deal with this? How do you manage overcoming sense of anxiety, control, or force because you're obligated by external factors to meet the needs of others? Thank you. Yeah, this is definitely a very, very real and genuine question. Thank you for this. I'm going to say that, yes, there are going to be things that we feel that we don't have choice over. But ultimately, there is a choice, right? I mean, we will choose that if we do this, it is going to create ease. If we don't do this, it's probably going to create more harm. But there isn't that aspect of choice. I mean, that's why when, someone tells us, you're supposed to do this for us because that's what makes you a good son, maybe, right? I mean, whatever I choose to follow is ultimately a choice. So to understand that. Now, in terms of feeling that I might have those emotions, but those emotions, even though they're justified, they're going to do damage. And so even if I take 5-10 minutes to at least appreciate something else, right, just to recenter my emotional space, more often than not, I found that at least when I've done an exercise of that, I've been able to shift into a different perspective. And usually there's a third or a fourth option as well that kind of makes everyone happy. And sometimes I still have to do the thing that I'm being forced to do, but at least now I've embraced it and I'm knowing that I'm choosing to do this right now. I'm giving you a very, very vague and a very general statement. I'd be happy to have a one-on-one, conversation if there's something more specific, but I'm trying to keep this as general advice for everyone.
Okay, the next question from Asia. Asia is gonna ask the question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Asia.
Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Brother Mohammed, first of all, this was amazing. very profound. The internal soundtrack, and that 1 minute alone, I think this is something I'm going to carry, and I think many of us for the rest of our lives, hopefully. It was so incredibly profound. I was wondering if we might be able to clarify, like the neurocardiogenic condition of, well, not just neurocardiogenic, but in terms of autonomic dysfunction, which is a complication of a lot of the different forms of physical disabilities that many members in DEEN support services and beyond might have, because which is quite separate from our ability to be able to manage stress and emotion, where, for example, when we're looking at autonomic dysfunction, the physical body is actually not in sync for things that people, for example, it's a condition that can arise from those who might be experiencing paralysis or MS or connective tissue disorders or neurodegenerative conditions, or even people with really advanced forms of diabetes. The physical body, very separate from our mind and emotion, is unable to regulate the sympathetic and parasympathetic neurosystems, where under one who isn't experiencing these forms of physical disabilities, you don't have to really think about the involuntary aspects of, like, your heart beating, your breathing in and out, your pupils dilating, your digestive occurring, the regulation of your bladder, etc. So if we think about it, like, there are people with disabilities who might, for example, have paralysis or other things like that. So it's that aspect. I just want to recognize, and that for members here, I don't think Brother Mohammed is referring to these things, but more along the lines of, okay, well, these things are happening separate in our body, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you are having a mental health issue of anxiety, because when you have a neurocardiogenic issue of tachycardia, which means, like your heart rate uncontrollably constantly being super high, or like your pupil is not dilating, all these things that are not in your control, it's very different from what Brother Mohammed is mentioning. It's more along the lines of, like, I just want to acknowledge that, and what he's saying about some things that are in your control and some things that aren't. And so recognizing, okay, now I'm feeling these things, these emotions. How do I do these kinds of breathing techniques, like you said, and the connection between what little parts that we do have in our control inside, with our heart and our mind connection and our self. What was the word you said? The internal soundtrack, which is something completely separate from autonomic dysfunction, and so they kind of, yeah, sorry, I just wanted to say it from the neuro, like the medical perspective a little bit. It's a little bit a little clarification there.
Yeah, potentially. Right. I was trying to understand and keep track.
Sorry.
I'm not so what I will say though is I think in there is an opportunity to, because I'm not a medical professional, right? So I do acknowledge that when there's actual medical conditions that, they will definitely have an impact on perhaps what we're trying to do. And perhaps we are talking about two different things here. But if it's possible, because you've got me curious now, is I would love to actually forward this question to the actual doctors and the researchers over at HeartMath Institute.
Sure.
Right, and kind of, because they will know exactly what we're talking about, and rather what you're talking about, and be able to see, well, can we still shift into a coherent state even though we might have a medical, autonomic dysfunction?
The answer to that one, as I collaborate with the neurocardiologist,
Yeah.
is it's not a hard no, but because it's what you can do is establish that disconnect between one's emotions and what they're experiencing and versus other things that are really completely out of our control. Because what's happening is you could be sitting or laying down completely fine doing nothing, but your autonomic system is really out of whack.
Yeah.
And so for people without these disabilities, it might be possible to do these kinds of activities that can help reduce BP, reduce the high heart rate, etc.
Sure.
But so are some things that are external to that, if you have some of these disabilities, that physically wouldn't be able to do that, but in terms of wellness and our mind-body connect, those activities that you're mentioning are massive to build that resilience. Like the resilience is the issue, because with those disabilities, we can't control what the body's going to do, but we're building the resilience, like you said, to be able to cope with that which is out of our control.
Yeah, I think definitely we should connect. We should connect one-on-one and offline, and just, because I'd love to learn more as well, but also understand. I mean, you're talking to a hypnotist, right? So the power of our mind and how it can affect our body states. A lot of the work that I do, we're working with individuals that have depression, and I'm talking about diagnosed, even though I'm not a medical professional, right? So I have to be careful in how I approach things, but I do get clients that have, diagnosed depression, anxiety, and all of that. And ultimately, what's been doing more harm is not the fact that the body is doing something that's absolutely normal. I mean, we have the mechanism to the anxiety because it's the part of our system that is supposed to communicate that something's wrong, is the belief that they can't actually get better, right? Or they can't actually, or that this is a problem to begin with. And I would love to share with you the story of how someone actually froze themselves to death. It's not a happy ending, because they thought that they were trapped inside a freezer, right? So the whole mind-body connection, there's several books that are written as well. I understand what you're saying, and I hear you. I would love to share that question to, with the actual doctors and the researchers over at HeartMath Institute to just get a different perspective of things. At the same time, I would hate for anyone to walk away from this presentation and be like, oh, I've got this autonomic thing, why bother, right? When it could possibly be true that the things aren't even related, and just by practicing resilience or getting into this place of the heart might actually give them exactly what they need to be able to get through it. Ultimately, beliefs is a very, 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 very powerful thing. But thank you so much, and I'm genuine. Let's connect, and inshallah, I want to get that information to you and everyone else as well. Okay, what is the prerequisite for the session and what does it involve? Briefly, there's no prerequisite. Well, I mean, depending, I guess I should be more clarified. It's going to be done over Zoom. So if you're watching this, ideally I want to be able to see your face, so you should have a camera, right? Just because there's so much communication that we, that are beyond words, right? So I want to know what's kind of going on. And ultimately, you're just gonna, let me know what's bothering you. And I will ask you to close your eyes, and we'll do an exercise that is very, very similar to the one that we did here, right? That's about it. And you can learn more about me and my work by just going through my various pages, which will be all made available to you. I have a YouTube channel as well, if you want to kind of see me working on with someone in person. These are just demos, people that have volunteered and given me permission to do like a demo just for the purposes of putting it on YouTube. But lots of information. So hopefully that answers. Do you give other webinars that we can take part of? Yeah, I do. I actually, also in that page, you'll see the page that I created which has, you know, like a booking calendar to book that free session. At the bottom, I've actually put links to various webinars, classes, online stuff. They're all free. They don't cost anything. Just mini classes between NLP. So what Rafia is doing, a more in-depth program for more of this HeartMath stuff. I have another workshop called, it's a 30-minute class called Emotional Regulation. So it's actually more on this, similar stuff. But yes, I do have other online programs as well that are paid. This is kind of what I do full-time as well. I think all the information is going to be emailed to you. Right, Sister Afia? You're on mute.
Yes, inshallah, we will be sending out that all that information where you can get your gift from Brother Muhammad, and take advantage of it. It's a free session. So inshallah, we will send out all that information and the recording of this webinar.
Yeah.
I think we don't
connect with me on Facebook as well. You know, I try to limit pictures of what I had for breakfast, but I try to put useful stuff on there. So inshallah, there'll be benefit there.
Okay, thank you all so much. I think that we don't have any more questions, do we? No, thank you so much. Jazakallah khair for attending. And if you all get a chance, please head over to deensupportservices.ca and donate to us. We are providing services to the most vulnerable in our community, especially at this time. They need us and we need you. So please donate if you can. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Muhammad, for this amazing presentation. It was tremendous value to all of us, and we really appreciate that. And thanks also for the collaboration with these support services.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you for everyone that, you know, gave answers and participated, and your questions. All the gold, the real gold out of any of these webinars is in those questions. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.